So my vision for the organization, or my vision statement, if you will, is to turn on light bulbs for people that will illuminate the world, and to provide work to learning professionals, giving them things that they love to do.
Okay.
And that is really where I see growing the organization, is just continuing to put out content, continuing to put out courses, support larger and larger organizations and smaller organizations as well, to not only grow my business, but to help them to grow theirs.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome to this special episode of Building Great Sales Teams here at the SCN Badass Business Summit. I'm excited about this. They graciously offered their podcast room for us to do this episode today, and I have a special guest with me, Mr. Bernie DeSantis. He's the CEO at Insignia Training Partners, and they do outsourced training. Bernie, I got one question for you, brother.
Yeah.
Are you doing Movember? Please tell me you are.
I will never take this thing off. I'm going to wear it forever. It has literally become my brand, unintentionally.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I were to shave this thing off, I don't even think people would recognize who I am anymore.
You know, I'm not wearing the backwards hat today, and everybody's freaking out. Like, I didn't even recognize you. So it's definitely your calling card. You know, but I still think I need to see you in one of those pictures on the Movember's website. You know, I've done it for several years in a row now. I know you're passionate about that as well. Is there a story behind that, or is it just something men's health is just...
You know, it's mental health awareness, suicide awareness. I lost my best friend to suicide 20 years ago. Honestly, it absolutely devastated me, and it took me a really long time to come to terms with it. And so now, as a way to both heal myself and to help other people, I've become an advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We do annual walks. I do quarterly suicide awareness events with a certified mental health professional, so that we can talk about all of the warning signs of mental health issues and potential suicides, so we can try to save lives.
I love it, brother. It is a big deal. I had a rugby brother I lost to suicide, and stepdad and a few other men in my life, and I love how much awareness that you and in general everybody's bringing to it now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we have to. If we don't talk about it, then there's a stigma and people don't know what to do. You could run across a situation where you could quite literally save somebody's life, but if you don't know how to do that, how to have that conversation, how can you help them?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So tell me more about the mustache. Where did this start? Why are you so passionate about it? And does it have its own Instagram so our listeners can follow it?
No, I have not started its own Instagram yet, although now I'm thinking about doing just that. So I told this story actually last year at Babs, and it's what allowed me to get on stage this year. The origin story of the mustache. So I started growing it in my 20s, wore it for about a year and a half, got great feedback, everybody loved it, but I got tired of maintaining it, right? I wake up in the morning, I look like Yosemite Sam, just had a cigar blow up in my face, and it's everywhere. So I took it off for a few years. Then I was having a couple glasses of bourbon with my cousin, and he was like, dude, I think you should grow that thing back out. And I fought it. We got about 5 or 6 bourbons deep, and finally I was like, okay, all right, fine, I'll grow it back out, right? So this was roughly 8 years ago. So I wore it for about 2.5 years or so and kept it pretty trimmed. And then my grandfather passed away. And my grandfather was my hero, like literally came to every t-ball game, every baseball game I ever played. He was always in my corner, really funny guy. He passed, and so my family asked me to give his eulogy. So I went up and obviously was happy to do that. And I got about halfway through my eulogy, and at the back of the funeral home, I saw a few people walk in that I didn't recognize. And obviously, when people get into their 70s, their 80s, their circle gets pretty small, right? You don't. I expected that I would know everybody who was going to be coming that day. So I finished my eulogy. I went to the back of the room. I introduced myself, and I asked them how they knew my grandfather. And they shared with me that he was their boss 40 years prior at the Better Made Potato Chip Factory in Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
And when they found out he had passed, they wanted to come and pay their respects to the best boss they ever had and see his big, beautiful mustache one more time. And so from that moment on, I was like, I am going to wear this thing forever to honor him.
I love it. You keep the mustache legacy going.
Yep. It's literally like a family heirloom.
40 years.
Yeah.
40 years, and they came in to pay their respects.
Yeah. I mean, you know, people don't really realize, I think, the impact that they can have on other individuals, right? Just being kind, being fun, having good conversations and caring about people. It, you know, it does. It has a lasting impact on people, you know, and we don't necessarily think about how we will impact another individual through our actions, but people remember how you treated them and how you made them feel.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And so, speaking of impact, so Insignia, that's your company.
Yeah.
And I was looking through your portfolio of clients, and I noticed that Ford was in there.
Yeah.
And so I was very interested in kind of, you know, just letting the listeners know what you did for them and kind of the impact you had there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, Insignia is a full-service learning and development company. We primarily focus on outsourcing and fractional resources, right? We provide those to companies. So Ford, this was about 5 years ago, give or take, they were rolling out a new software platform called Kronos. Dimensions was, or Workforce Central at the time. The new version is Dimensions. And it's a payroll and
HR?
time off HR platform, right? So they had a highly customized version, and Kronos, the organization, the provider of this software, they have like a 2-year waiting list to be able to send trainers out to organizations to actually teach on it, right? So they had this highly customized version, so they contacted us. We sent them 4 facilitators and instructional designers to come in and learn all about the custom software that they had built out.
Okay.
So we created this training program, and then we took that training and we went and taught it to all of the frontline supervisors at all of the plants all across the Eastern Seaboard so that they could approve payroll and time off and do all of those things. And really the value there is that, you know, an organization like Ford, you know, they're a huge organization, but they still think about overhead and, you know, onboarding people and things like that. And when you have a project of that nature, it requires a subject matter expertise to be able to come in and learn the subject matter or whatever it is, and then to teach it. But they don't necessarily want to have to hire full-time employees to do that. Right. So they can outsource it to us. We can come in, do the job, do it really, really well because we're super focused on just that.
Yeah.
And then we're out.
I love it. It makes so much sense. It's a lot of what I do now in consulting.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very niche in building sales teams.
Yeah. I mean, fractional is what it is these days, right? I mean, you know, people want that subject matter expertise. They want people who really know their stuff. And when you're talking about the economy right now, hiring lots of people doesn't make sense, right? And the people who are getting laid off oftentimes are the ones who are not generating revenue. So that's where a company like mine can come in, again, just do the job, and then we're out and there's no overhead.
I couldn't agree more. And so part of some of the consulting packages I do and fractional stuff, we build out a learning management system. And you and I had this in common. We were talking through it. And so what would you recommend for some of these small businesses that want to build this out, and in particular for their sales team? Because I know you have a business development background. And so what would you recommend kind of if they're do-it-yourselfers? What should they do first?
You know, honestly, I think a learning management system really is kind of the second phase. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of e-learning. You know, I think that the fact that people can go through it self-paced is looked at as a benefit. But the reality is most people don't like nor want to go to training. They don't want to do it.
Right.
I am one of those guys who, if I have to take e-learning, I'm going to watch the video and click through it as fast as I can, whether I've picked stuff up or not. And again, this is coming from a learning guy, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, organizations who want to build out a learning program, they really need to focus on what are the objectives of the learning program and get really dialed in with how they are reaching those objectives and how they are getting behavior change. And I believe the best way to do that is either an in-person or a virtual training program where it is an instructor who's leading the course, doing activities. There has to be
live.
There's live, yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking about things that are compliance related, regulatory stuff that doesn't change all that often, LMSs are great, right? It's evergreen for the most part, minor updates here and there. If you're talking about something as dynamic as sales, it has to be live. In my opinion, it has to be live.
No, I couldn't agree more. The learning management systems that we built out are secondary, and typically they're introduction to the company before they walk in the door.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of meet the team type stuff, and not like the individual team members, but meet the company, the mission, the values. This is, our sales structure. This is how we operate. This is how the schedule is, you know. So it's, you remember that orientation video you used to watch?
Yeah.
When you used to go work for a company? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
and so we've jazzed that up a little bit. So when they walk in the door and they do the actual training, they're prepared with the product knowledge. Yeah. And it really is a big focus on product knowledge. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when you get into, middle management training, leadership, and we talk about like facilitating meetings and stuff like that. Like one of my clients has 90-something templated meetings that they do.
Wow.
And so they roll it out to the manager one a week for the next 90-something weeks. And the manager can start implementing those meetings and training on those meetings. It's something that like a regional manager couldn't effectively deploy to the whole team, but the individual manager's growth is kind of tracked and understood that, hey, once he gets to 92 weeks, he knows every meeting in the book, literally, right? Yeah. And so I guess walk us through the evolution of that training for you. So the employee walks in the door, and kind of how do y'all, because if you give them everything day one, you do a live training day one of 10 new employees, and you try and jam everything in, you and I know they're gonna retain about maybe 20% of that.
Maybe.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's there's such a thing as the learning curve, right? People are going to forget stuff, especially if they're not immediately implementing it, right? So, the training programs that my company builds are always custom. They're bespoke to the individual organization. So we come in and we learn about the culture, how they operate, what it is that they're trying to accomplish with that training. So I can't say that there's a cookie cutter approach that we walk in every single time, right? But what we do is we'll bring in one of our fractional chief learning officers. They'll learn about the organization, understand what the objectives are, what the different roles within an organization are, because training isn't one size fits all, right? So really figuring out what's the most important pieces that new hire needs to know and understand so that we can get them out and producing, right? Get their butt in the seat to start doing the work. Yeah. But then beyond that, there's always got to be follow-up and follow-through, and I think that's what's most oftentimes missing with a lot of onboarding programs is it's kind of a box to check, right? A lot of organizations just say, yep, get them through, get them done, get their butt in the seat, get them making phone calls, right? It happens, right? We don't necessarily know what we don't know, but it is in that follow-up. It's in that follow-through. It's in the coaching, the performance management, doing the role plays, even after they've completed that new hire training. Really new hire is, if it's a 3-week program, just as an example, there should be 90 days of follow-up afterwards, still continuous coaching, new training programs, over and over, just implementing the things that they've learned so that it really sticks. Because, if you follow, habit building, it takes roughly 21 to 45 days of consistent focused behavior to create a new habit. Yeah. And if you are not following through at minimum for those 45 days, again, I think 90 is kind of the sweet spot, they are going to forget stuff. They are not going to be effectively prepared to do the job.
I feel better about this now because there's not an organization that I work with that I don't recommend daily role play and a daily sales meeting.
Absolutely.
And especially when it's sales centric, right? It's one thing to have a business development role where you're doing account management and maybe you're doing some prospecting. And so maybe you're setting the appointment or something like that. But it's a whole nother thing to be daily, on the phones, on the doors, on the B2B doors, prospecting out there every day, and all you do is sales. And so in my mind, in all of my experience, it's been that daily role play, that daily meeting, and you have to be dynamic with it. You can't do the, especially like remotely now. Remotely is a whole nother animal. Yeah. And so I love what you're saying because so much of what we do is implementing the education daily. It has to happen. Yeah. And then it's like a singer. You got to warm up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the role play is huge. I love role play. Big fan of role play.
Me too.
And so that's a big part of what we do for sure. So what about when you get into management? Because I feel like once you train them initially on the front end, I find a lot of companies aren't doing a train the trainer.
No, they don't.
They're not doing, they're not making sure that the management has gone through all of the essential training before they promote them. They're promoting them early, you know? And so what we do is we set up an opportunity structure. And that opportunity structure, they have to check the boxes that they've done this training. And it's in person, it's the virtual, you know what I mean? And a lot of times there's recordings that go with it, you know? So then there's the audible part. When you're looking at ongoing training, is it always live, or do you also supplement it?
It's, you know, it's a hybrid. Yeah, there's always going to be different aspects because you're talking about different learning styles with different individuals, right? You have the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and some people just like to read stuff, right? So there always needs to be a variety of different types of training that's happening. But I agree, it needs to be continuous and ongoing. The biggest challenge that I see oftentimes in organizations is they promote, frankly, just out of desperation, out of need. They are looking to grow. They say, Bob over here, Bob, you are our best salesperson, so you will probably be a good sales leader.
You're the best we got.
Go and lead this team of 10 individuals. Well, you know, Bob was a great individual producer, right? He knows how to jump on the phone and sell. But those same skill sets aren't necessarily applicable to how you run a sales team, right? How you coach, how you communicate, how you motivate. So all of those pieces need to ultimately be taught. And a lot of these organizations, again, just based on the fact that they need to put a butt in the seat,
right?
They take Bob, the high producer, put him over a team, and then all of a sudden they're shocked that Bob doesn't know how to lead a team, even though they never gave Bob the skill sets to train, coach, and lead those people. It's just like onboarding. It's a new process. It's a new thing. There needs to be skill practice, right? They need to go through and maybe do some demo coaching, some demo performance management. If they're not taking the time to do those things, they're ultimately setting that leader up to fail.
I love your expertise on this because it's just validating everything that I do. Selfishly, you know, I love your expertise on this because, you know, when we look at promotion, we're looking at, hey, not just can you sell, but can you lead? You know, so part of the qualifications in order to even qualify to lead is that you have been able to train people successfully. And that you can duplicate yourself by 2. That's a big rule, especially early on in my sales org. That was a big rule for us. If you duplicate yourself by 2, you can be promoted. We had several structures in between, like a salesperson and a manager. We know we had a trainer, we had an assistant manager, so there were several levels to it. And that way, you know, with salespeople, you always got to keep them engaged and interested. You know what I'm saying? And so the more levels that you can have that they can go and achieve, and you know, badges and gamify it a little bit. You're going to be a lot better off. So I guess what's next for Insignia?
You know, my goal for Insignia is ultimately I want to be able to pass off Insignia the way that it was passed off to me by my predecessor.
Okay.
So I worked within Insignia as a learning consultant, contract facilitator, and virtual producer for a little over 5 years. One day I went to my predecessor and self-servingly, I said, you know, I'm really enjoying this contractor lifestyle. I like the freedom, getting to choose which clients I work with or don't, which is a blessing as well. You know, making better money than I ever did in corporate America. How can I do more of this? How can I help you to grow the business so that, again, self-servingly, I can do more of this work? And she came back to me and said, Bernie, I'm going to do you one better. Do me one better? What do you mean? She's like, look, I've run this business for 15 years. I absolutely love it. If I were a younger woman, I'd do it forever. But I'm 65, my husband's 67, he's retired, I'm looking to retire. So I've actually been trying to sell the business for the last couple of years. But I didn't want to sell it to a larger organization that would just tear it apart or not take care of my clients the way that I have all these years. And she said that she has never had feedback or results like she had with me, and she thought I was the right person to take it over. And so I would like to ultimately find that next person for my organization. I'd like to grow us to be about $10 to $15 million organization within the next 10 years. And then, again, find someone very similar in that I can pass the company off to and continue the legacy.
I love that. And then paying it forward, too.
Exactly.
You know? But you're not 65 years old.
I am not.
So what's next for you?
For me, it's, you know, it's a tough question, Doug. I really am very focused on growing the business at this point. So my vision for the organization, or my vision statement, if you will, is to turn on light bulbs for people that will illuminate the world and to provide work to learning professionals, giving them things that they love to do.
Okay.
And that is really where I see growing the organization, is just continuing to put out content, continuing to put out courses, support larger and larger organizations and smaller organizations as well, to not only grow my business, but to help them to grow theirs.
Okay.
Probably,
So you'll still be in the business.
I
You'll
will
just
always
be mentoring at that point.
Yeah, I will always be in the business. I will always work in the business to some degree because I love doing that work. I love teaching. I love coaching. I love doing the virtual production pieces. But as you know, you can't really work in the business and on the business at the same time, right? So while I'm peeling myself back a little bit from doing a lot of the day-to-day type of stuff, I will always produce events. I will always run, a mastermind training program. I will always do some of that type of stuff. But for me, it's really about, how do I grow and expand this thing? How do I bring more clients into our world? How do I provide more value out to the world?
So I don't know if you have this person identified or not, or if you're looking for them, but what would you say to them if they were in this room today?
Make yourself the obvious choice.
I love it.
Do the things that will make you the obvious choice. Have passion, be excited, have energy. Those things are contagious, and people will follow you if you can make them feel good and you can prove that you have and can get the results that you're looking for.
Bernie, this has been an amazing episode. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today and taking time out of the BABS Summit to be here and do this with me.
I'm glad to. Thanks very much for having me, Doug. Appreciate it, brother.
Let's get building.